Hi, and welcome back to AppSecCon 2022. In this upcoming panel discussion, we're going to be talking about Zero Trust DevSecOps, and I'll be leading a conversation with Upendra Madikar, who is the Chief Security Officer at Snap Finance, and Deepak Mathur, who is the Managing Director of KPMG's consulting practice focused on Zero Trust and SASE. Great conversation. Let's go ahead and check it out. Hi, welcome to this session on Zero Trust and DevSecOps. My name is Mark Lambert. I'm going to be moderating today, and I'm joined by Deepak and Upendra. Upendra, I'm going to throw the ball to you first. Let's talk about what is Zero Trust and what are the principles behind it?
Hey, good day, Mark, and thank you for having me with Deepak. Excited to be here. When we talk about Zero Trust, right, let's first try to understand what trust is, right? So if we look at our dollar bills, it says, in God, we trust, right? So what does actually trust mean? And then we will add some color to what Zero Trust is, right? So there is a trust equation in the industry that we see, which is credibility plus reliability plus intimacy divided by self-orientation is trust. Now, when we take the trust that we have been so used to on the dollar bills, as we know, right? I mean, and then we trust that, hey, Mark is a good guy or Upendra is a good guy, right? So what is happening is that is in this new era of cyber, the systems themselves, they could be deployed anywhere. Right. So what people are doing right now is that each and every component, each and every system that we are talking about, how can we deploy in a manner so that it can be fully trusted? So Zero Trust does not necessarily mean that you have no trust in the system. What Zero Trust essentially means is that you have trust in the system to the nth degree. So in its completeness. So just to add more color to it, NIST has come up with a very official definition of Zero Trust, where what they are talking about is that it's a collection of design ideas, a collection of concepts, least privilege and whole 9 yards as it relates to users. All right, when the customers are interacting and the users are interacting. Now, the users, they use devices, right? So how can a user trust user's device? How can user trust the network traffic on which the device is communicating with the application? How do you trust that particular application? And how do you trust the data? So I have used trust in multiple ways, but that is what the whole concept of Zero Trust is evolving. It's not just related to ZTNA, which is a Zero Trust network access, or not just SASE. It basically goes beyond that. Deepak, you want to add some more color to it, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thanks for having me here, Mark and Upendra. I think there are so many definitions of Zero Trust right now, but what Upendra alluded to is a great way to look at it. We have to think about trust in something when we apply the principles of Zero Trust. But because of the nature of this era of like multi-cloud and hybrid cloud, and really like not defining the boundaries of our data center or DMZs or data layer anymore, I think trust is moving away from inside of an organization to everywhere, right? That's where Zero Trust kind of has its roots in. I want to touch upon a little bit about some of these principles that we talk about, and generally, I would say, and I'm sure my fellow panelists here would agree, that Zero Trust is not about a product. It's not a piece of technology or a process. It's really like a frame of design that companies are adopting right now. It doesn't have any particular ecosystem only application. I can be the chief information security officer of a company and want to apply Zero Trust principles. I can be a product owner. I can be the CIO of the company. So all realms of an organization can adopt zero trust because it's not a product. Yes, to enable zero trust, you need participation and you need products that can come together and solve and apply the principles. But so far, if anybody is trying to think that I can just buy a piece of technology or buy a platform and start doing zero trust, I think that would be the wrong way to approach it. Let's talk about the principles. I think some of the key principles are perimeter-less design. We know that that's kind of the starting point for zero trust. That it's not about just one network, but any network, or no longer distinguishing between intranet and internet. It's almost like everything is out in the open, and you need to design around it. The other thing for zero trust is context aware. Everything in the ecosystem, whether it is a machine to machine interaction or a human to machine interaction, should have a context. That comes with dynamic access controls. As they say, trust but verify is one of the key principles. So anything that is entering or leaving your organization or your ecosystem should be authenticated, should be authorized, and preferably encrypted as much as possible. One of the other principles I want to talk about is almost close to real-time monitoring and signal assessment. Because of technology today, we are in a place where you can literally very close to real time, if not real time all the time, assess what's happening in your ecosystem. That continuous feedback, anomaly detection, and capability to understand your traffic patterns is really key in zero trust. So a lot of organizations are investing into transparency and understanding the transaction, activity as it happens, to give them that level of perspective. So just want to touch upon a few principles again. Over to you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Deepak. And you touched a lot of things there. And when I hear about zero trust, there's a lot of marketing associated with zero trust to today, right? And I think the point that you just made, actually, there's a few things, but one of the things I want to pull on a little is you said there's no platform that you can just buy and you get zero trust. And this reminds me of the days when DevOps was first out, which really nicely dovetails into our conversation today. So how do we apply zero trust to DevSecOps? Obviously, organizations are developing in the cloud more. Infrastructure is more dynamic. As you said, treat everything as if it's a third-party internet connected service, because it probably is. So, maybe Deepak, you could kind of like go into that a little deeper, and let's talk about how we connect with DevSecOps.
Sure, Mark. I mean, great question. I think this is where the rubber meets the road, as they say. So in my experience and some work that I have done with multiple companies, when we think about convergence of, DevSecOps and zero trust, which actually, funny enough, are the two hottest topics, in the cyber realm of things today. I feel everybody wants to do something in DevSecOps, and then everybody wants to do something in zero trust. So this is a great panel that we are all on together to talk about those two things together. I would talk a little bit about from a practical application. There has been a lot of focus on access and role-based access for DevSecOps, right? As we know, in the developer community or the engineering community, access is key. We are, looking at so many breaches around the Gits of the world, right? So Git repositories are getting breached. There's a lot of sharing of passwords or keys happening. So definitely zero trust principles of least privilege and a very tightly knit access management is key. So if I am a developer, what do I have access to? If I am getting access, is it context-based, right? I cannot just go anytime and start doing some work. I need to be, there should be policies, and there should be an enforcement point of my access as to when I log in and doing code development or submitting my code. So I think that continues to be a very critical focus area. And with that, privilege access is very important, right? So privilege access has been in the ecosystem for a while. There are legacy players and modern players that are coming into play. But really, this concept of just-in-time access for software development is really important right now. So I would start there, but it doesn't end there. So, like I talked about, your access understanding, your entitlement understanding, but also capability to audit and capability to monitor your complete DevSecOps ecosystem is key to Zero Trust. So a lot of stress is being put into signals, as I call it, of software security or supply chain security that companies are developing through the pipeline. I need to understand when a code is checked in. I need to understand who checked it in. Did it went through a peer review cycle? I see a container was developed. Who put that container together? What policies were applied to it? How are we hardening the container? When I'm packaging code, what are the binaries that are coming together? Do I know if those binaries have gone through the right level of security scanning? Has somebody attested to that? If I am developing or standing up a serverless product, or I'm even developing like a VM, how do I validate that all the right things that I'm using in it is sort of attested to? I think those are the level of details we are going to. It's not easy to get that data out of an ecosystem, but what I call as like really going and understanding deep monitoring analysis of your pipelines, of your product suites, that's where we see the Zero Trust principles apply more. Upendra, over to you. I'm sure you have some color to add to it.
No, this is brilliant. Thank you. And just to add a different facet. I mean, whatever you said, Deepak, is wonderful. If we go back to the principles, right? I mean, what is Zero Trust in the first place, right? So Zero Trust, as we talked about, and then, we can talk about how to apply it in DevSecOps. Again, just adding to the color that, adding color to what Deepak was saying. We talk about users, Zero Trust in users. We talked about Zero Trust in devices, right? We talked about Zero Trust in the network, right? We talked about Zero Trust in the applications, and we talked Zero Trust in data. Now, if that is what we are talking about, and when we are trying to develop an application and deploy it in production, be it bare metal, be it your hypervisor, be it in the Docker container and whatnot, right? We need to think about, to what Deepak was talking about, is that this application that we are building, and when you are going through this CI/CD, which is the continuous integration, continuous delivery, all the way to continuous security and continuous Zero Trust, if you will, right? Thinking about all the things that he talked about, right? Identify, detect, protect, respond, recover, right? Now, when you are developing this binary that Deepak was talking about, right? How do you know that this binary is developed by the right developer? So it starts right from there, right? So if I'm checking in the code right now, right? I mean, that DevSecOps, we have a classic infinite cycle, right? I mean, where you plan, you develop, you build, you test, you release. And then on the right-hand side, after you release, you deliver, you deploy, and then operate, monitor, feedback, right? I mean, that classic infinite cycle. So when we are talking about that, we need to incorporate security into each and every phase of that DevSecOps to make sure that we have a Zero Trust in it. What does that mean? So what that means is that when you are planning your project, so let's say there is a new initiative that is coming up right now, right? Have you done threat modeling? is there enough gate for threat modeling in the planning section? Right? When you are doing development, right? You can be using any IDE for that example. For example, are you following the behavioral driven development? Are you following test TDDs, BDDs is what they call? Are you doing secure coding over there? How does your SAS, DAST, IST, dependency checks that you are doing? All those kinds of things are taken care of in the develop, So security as code, because that is what you are talking about, right? So building and then testing, that's what happens at that particular point. Now, when, maybe you are using Jenkins, you are using whatever, right? I mean, pick your favorite platform at that particular point. The binaries, the code reviews has happened. It has gone through the SAS, DAST, IST, the pen testing, pen testing need not happen at that each and every time, for a bigger project, you may decide to do it. But let's say you have done that, right? So now you have a sanitized application code. How can I digitally sign it? Right. So the signature is very important, because what happens is that when somebody goes and pushes it, right? I mean, in the part of the continuous delivery, continuous deployment, on the other side, how do you know that there is no skew in the application, that a developer intended to add this particular code, the same binary is getting delivered on the other side? So when you are bootstrapping that application, you are verifying the signature or HMAC, right? I mean, so that the key management and whole 9 yards that happens on your application, right? And to Deepak's point, where you have to monitor, deploy, after deployment, you have to monitor and operate it, saying that, hey, is somebody going ahead and changing this? So the file transfer should happen securely. The config, right? I mean, most of the attacks that we are seeing in the industry, Deepak, as you know, are like configuration issues, right? So are there any skews, right, when you are doing infrastructure as code, or when you are doing environment, the entire environment as a code? And nowadays, as you know, the software-defined perimeter, SDP, there is a 2.0 version that is coming up. So how do you make sure that there is no skew? Where you intend to put this application on the left-hand side, is it been deployed on the right-hand side, right? So making sure that happens, the secure scanning, the continuous monitoring in terms of patches, auditing, so that entire ecosystem is what we call, on my understanding, is zero trust in DevSecOps, right? So combining whatever we are doing, making sure that what you do on the left-hand side, what you do in the middle, and what you do on the right-hand side. We talk about shift left all the time, but it is the entire cycle. We just cannot be shifting left. Of course, we have to shift left, but we have to shift left. We have to stay in the middle, so make sure that it is secure in the middle, as well as it is secure on the right-hand side. And that is what my understanding, Deepak and Mark, is in terms of incorporating zero trust in DevSecOps.
Yeah. So there's really a lot of pieces in movement here. You got the infrastructure, you've got the pipeline fundamentally, you've got the development process to validate that it is built correctly, right? Because just because something is signed, you need to be able to check and validate that the left part, right? To overuse the shift left. So there's a lot of stakeholders in play, right? So as we get to start closing out the session, so let's just talk a little bit about how we unify the organization together. Maybe what's coming as well from the point of view of what are the drivers. So my first question goes to you, Upendra, and then kind of like hand over to Deepak. But as we close out, who owns zero trust? Why is it important to the business? Kind of what are the trends that are going to impact this?
Yeah. No, and this is going to be very particular to the organization in my mind, right? Different organizations are at different level of understanding of zero trust, right? So let me start by saying this. Joe Biden, our president, is talking about zero trust, right? So what that means is that people in the organization, all of us who are executives, right? And we in the board, we understand the importance of cyber, right? So there is no doubt that we don't know about cyber, right? They have heard the term zero trust. I think it's on to the security practitioners, people like us, right, to educate the broader organization and bring them up to speed as to what zero trust is. It is not about, like Deepak correctly said, hey, deploy this product and then, hey, don't bother me, right? So it is not about that. It is about the principle in the organization, which we all are, it's a team sport. Like I keep on saying, security is a team sport, security is a journey. And we all understand that there are conflicting priorities. So it is going to be a journey. So the first thing, Mark, to answer your question is understand what zero trust means to your organization. If you are leading a DevOps or DevSecOps, right? I mean, depending on the organization, it may be embedded in the same organization, or it may be completely federated in the organization. That's fine. Partner with your DevOps person, right? Create a story over here saying that, hey, how can we make it very transparent to the users and start embedding zero trust one step at a time, in the DevSecOps, trying to make it as transparent to your users, right? Now, there is a little bit of art than science over here as to how you can make make it transparent, but don't start failing the build. Initially, try to show that, hey, there are so many defects in your areas, right? I mean, or it's not a wall of shame, but, and create a wall of shame and wall of fame, creating that metrics. Ultimately, what happens is that we are here to enable business securely, right? And time to market, the reason we are going from waterfall to agile and having this continuous integration, continuous delivery is to get to time, is a speed to market, right? I mean, innovation and all that, right? So what my thinking is that, and I'll let Deepak speak just in the interest of time. But, my thinking is partner with the appropriate team members, create a business case as to why it is important, and start creating it one step at a time and make it a part of journey. Deepak?
Yeah, thanks, Upender. So real quick, I think this is a challenge right now that Upender was talking about, like who to start with, who to bring together to talk about DevSecOps and zero trust. One of the approaches which some of the organizations have started to take is, can I do a COE-like approach? Bring my product and developer community together with my network engineering community, with my risk and compliance people, as well as endpoint people, everybody into a COE model, and educate them, as Upendra was saying, that, hey, this is what zero trust means for your each ecosystem. Develop some use cases. Hey, if I have to go and solve for zero trust in product security, this is what I want to start with. If I have to go and solve it for network security, this is what I will do. I think those are creating some good synergies where people are saying like, hey, hold on a second. We are trying to solve for the same use cases in silo in our domain, but there is a good amount of overlap. How do we stitch it all together? How do we orchestrate this? I think that has been a good approach to start thinking about applying zero trust broadly. And then you can then start to converge into technologies and processes, because we hear about security as code, compliance as code, infrastructure as code. I think it's like inevitable that it'll happen to an organization over a period of time. So these use cases can be applied quickly. So I feel that's how the message of zero trust and bringing all the parties together can work. And then lastly, I think, Mark, you talked about regulation. Yes, there is regulation coming. We already are seeing from the White House, as Upender mentioned, a pretty robust, and I would say it was a pretty good document around how the federal agencies are going to start applying zero trust. They are working on a rating on how software would be rated. If you are a company that works for, try to sell product to the federal government, they will be able to rate your product going forward. So I think for all commercial organization, it's it's almost coming. We can see that in a year or two, there will be some level of regulation and some level of reporting required around software development and software delivery, where zero trust enforcement can be seen. So it's a great time to start to kind of organize around it. And as and when that regulation comes, you are more ready than others if you start to organize around it right now.
Great. Well, thank you guys. This has been a great conversation. I know we could go for another half hour or so. So, folks, we're going to wrap up here. Thank you. We'll be in the live chat as well. So kind of keep the conversation going there. Thanks very much, Deepak, Upendra. Thank you for this great conversation today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.